Right now, the River Thames runs through the heart of London exactly as it has for thousands of years. Wide, dark, and restless. On any given day, you'll find tourist boats heading toward Tower Bridge, commuters crossing on foot, cyclists weaving along the embankment, and the city's famous grey sky reflected in the water below. It is one of the most familiar sights in the world. Most people who see it every day barely give it a second thought. But step back just 200 years, barely 3 lifetimes, and this same river tells a completely different story. The same water, the same city on its banks, a world away. Using advanced AI reconstruction techniques, we've taken original period engravings and frost fair prints, some of them over 300 years old, and brought them back to life as photorealistic scenes. What you're about to see is one of the strangest, most joyful, and most completely forgotten chapters in London's long history. Between the early 1600s and 1814, the Thames froze solid at least 24 times. And almost every single time, Londoners did the same thing. They walked out onto it, set up stalls, opened pubs, held races, roasted oxen, printed souvenirs, and turned a frozen river into the most chaotic street market the city had ever seen. Stay with us, because by the end of this, you'll understand something that no history book quite captures about the people who built this city. The reason the Thames froze comes down to 2 things happening at the same time. The first was what climate historians now call the Little Ice Age, a sustained period of significantly colder temperatures that gripped Britain and the whole of the Northern Hemisphere from around the 1300s to the mid-1800s. Temperatures dropped by roughly half a degree on average. Half a degree sounds trivial. It is the difference between a river that flows and a river that stops. The second factor was the old London Bridge itself. Built in 1209 and standing until 1831, it ran on 19 closely spaced stone arches supported by wide piers. Every winter, floating ice and debris would collect between those piers, effectively damming the river upstream and slowing the current to almost nothing. A slow river freezes far more easily than a fast one. The bridge, one of the great landmarks of medieval London, was, inadvertently, the engine that made the frost fairs possible. The first frost fair that we have a clear record of takes place in the winter of 1607 to 1608. The ice has been firm enough to walk on since December, but it is January when it becomes thick enough to build on. Football pitches appear on the ice. Bowling matches are arranged. Fruit sellers, shoemakers and barbers set up their stalls. Somebody, inevitably, opens a pub. The Thames has become a street, and Londoners are treating it exactly as they treat every other street, by filling it with commerce and noise. This tells you something important about the city. The Thames freezing is a genuine disaster. Trade stops. The watermen who run the river's taxi service lose their income overnight. Goods cannot move. The practical response of London is to turn the disaster into a market. Not out of denial, but out of the deeply practical instinct that if something is going to be unusable, it might as well be used. The greatest frost fair of them all arrives in the winter of 1683 to 1684, and it earns itself a name. The Blanket Fair. The Thames freezes in early December and doesn't thaw until February. The ice reaches nearly a foot thick in places. And on top of it, the people of London built something that has to be seen to be believed. Entire rows of temporary shops appear on the ice, laid out so deliberately that people give them street names: Friesland Street, Temple Street on the ice. There are coffee houses, taverns, booksellers and souvenir stores. Bull baiting takes place on the ice. There are horse races and coach races run on the frozen river. A whole ox is roasted over an open fire and sold by the slice. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a printer named G. Croom sets up his printing press on the frozen Thames and begins producing souvenir cards. King Charles II visits the fair with his family and picks up a souvenir from Croom's press. A printed card recording his name, the date, and the words, printed on the River of Thames. That card still exists. It sits in the collection of the London Museum today. A piece of paper produced on a frozen river, handed to a king, surviving 340 years. The diarist John Evelyn walks through the fair and records what he sees. Coaches running between Westminster and the Temple as smoothly as on any London street. The ice covered with people, sliding and skating. The whole scene what he calls a carnival on the water. But he also records what surrounds it. Trees splitting in the cold as if struck by lightning. Men, cattle, fish and birds dying across the country. Ice is not a reliable floor, and the Thames is not a patient host. At the fair of 1739, a section of ice gives way without warning, swallowing tents, stalls and people. At the fair of 1789, a ship moored at Rotherhithe tied its cables to a nearby pub for stability. In the night, the ice shifts, the ship moves, the cables hold, and the pub is torn apart. 5 people sleeping inside are killed. The same ice that made the fair possible is the same ice that takes them. February 1814. The Thames has frozen again. Nobody knows it will be the last time. The tradition by now is well over a century old, and the city follows it without hesitation. Stalls go up within hours of the ice becoming firm. Booksellers and toy shops appear. Pubs open. Bands start playing. A printer sets up his press on the ice, just as Croom did 130 years before. And near Blackfriars Bridge, an elephant is led across the frozen Thames. The elephant is not a rumour. It is recorded in multiple accounts as a deliberate stunt. A showman's proof that the ice is strong enough to hold almost anything. Staged to draw the crowds, it works. The fair runs for 4 days and draws tens of thousands. Food and drink are sold at what accounts describe as outrageous prices. The frozen river is a city again, for the last time. Then the temperature rises. The ice softens. Within days, it is breaking up, and the fair is over. The stalls are packed away and carried off the river. The Thames reclaims itself. It has never frozen like that again. 2 things ended the frost fairs permanently. The first was the demolition of Old London Bridge in 1831. For 600 years, its narrow arches had been slowing the river, allowing the ice to build. The new bridge, completed in 1832, had just 5 wide-open arches. The natural dam was gone, and the Thames began to flow as it was always meant to. The second factor was the slow end of the Little Ice Age itself. Winters growing gradually milder as the 19th century progressed. The combination of a faster river and a warmer climate closed the door on the frost fairs for good. There is an irony worth noting. The Industrial Revolution transforming Britain in the early 19th century, the furnaces, the factories, the coal burning at an unprecedented scale, was quietly beginning to warm the atmosphere. The Little Ice Age was ending partly because human industry was pushing temperatures upward. The frost fairs disappeared at precisely the moment Britain was building a world that would eventually produce a very different kind of climate problem. The Thames frost fairs lasted for just over 200 years, appearing when the cold allowed it and vanishing when the cold left. A printing press on a frozen river, a king buying a souvenir on the ice, an elephant near Blackfriars Bridge. A pub opens within hours of the freeze. That is London. Handed something impossible and making something of it before the morning is out. The river flows freely today, but somewhere in the archives, Croom's printing card still carries the date. If this video took you somewhere you didn't expect, please leave a like. It helps this channel reach more people than you'd think. Subscribe and hit the bell for more AI historical reconstructions. There are more lost worlds to bring back. We'll see you for the next one.